is Dr. Lars Schernikau from HMS Berghow. And Lars will talk about the energy transition and coal and a global perspective. All right, over to you, Lars.
I think you already had a lot of interesting presentations today, and probably I'm going to speak to the converted, but I come more from a macroeconomic point of view. Our family's been in the coal business for 50 years. I personally have been in the business for 20 years. I recently published this new coal handbook, which is everything you need to know about coal from a chemical and physical characteristic point of view, which you might find useful. But today we'll speak about the energy transition and coal, a global perspective. I'm German by birth. I grew up there, and Germany is, of course, the leader in the so-called energy transition. And it's always interesting to see how things pan out in South Africa and the rest of the world. And Vuslat already gave us a lot of information, which I'm going to build on. Let's see if this works. All right. So yeah, I live primarily in Europe, but we are active worldwide. And I have another book, just a recent book. This is one there. It's called The Unpopular Truth About Electricity and the Future of Energy, which has the detail if the subject of the transition interests you from an energy economic point of view. This explains what the problems are and what the problems are not. And this is the coal handbook. HMS, our company, German-based, active in Africa for 15, 20 years almost, Asia as well as the US. So we supply to the global market, and we also have investments in South Africa and in Africa. Positive news, you've seen this before. The world has never, ever been better off than today. We're living longer, we're living healthier, and we're just better. It doesn't mean we don't have many problems, but it's so much better. Poverty is at all-time low. Imagine 100 years ago, there was 2 billion people. Today it's 8 billion people. And still, today there's few people living in poverty than 100 years ago. I mean, what an incredible achievement. Child mortality is at all-time low. So we have these positive things to celebrate, and yet we hear of the end of the world, which clearly is not around the corner. But there is probably a reason why we hear that, which has become very political, has become about money, has become about what Mike was saying, this ESG fund, this big fund, there's billions, trillions of dollars in this fund, in this pocket, that need to be distributed. And people make money with this. And in order to make money with this green fund, you need to make up stories so that people put money in there and then to spend it. The UN has put forward the 17 sustainability goals, which you may or may not have seen. Talks about no poverty, talks about zero hunger, and it talks about energy. So goal number 7 is affordable and, how do they say it, clean energy. Now, we understand that in order to eradicate poverty and to avoid being hungry, you need what? You need energy. That's the fundamental basis of everything we do. In fact, it goes further. All our industrial development is based on energy. All the work we do, our economic development, everything is based on energy. In fact, it goes further. All of these 11 goals, health, wellness, education, clean water, everything is based on energy. So when we provide reliable energy, we are providing, or we are taking care of 11 of those sustainability goals at least, probably more. And that is maybe where the ESG point comes. So when you present to your banks, show this. Show exactly this. And now you, bank, tell me, why am I doing something wrong? Okay. Question is, will wind and solar do this? And the book explains you what the problems are, and we'll talk about a few of those things today. Now, Norway, one of the European countries, is probably the greenest country in the world when you consider green. 90% of power is generated from renewables. They have the highest electric vehicle penetration. They have 1,700 hydroelectric dams. 1,000 water reservoirs, huge, huge amounts of everything green. And yet, oil demand has not gone down at all. So what's going on? How come that Norway, which is anybody's dream, I want to be like Norway, and yet they're consuming the same amount of oil as they consumed 50 years ago? And they didn't have any population increase, by the way. So something is not adding up, is it? So show that to your banks, please. Now, we understand energy, this trilemma, the energy policy, that we need to have secure, reliable energy, we need to have affordable energy, and we need to have environmental protection, we need to have whatever is green energy, we need to have it reasonably green. The problem is it starts with one. First, you need to have reliable energy before you can talk about anything else. If you don't have reliable energy, you remain poor. Once you have reliable energy, you can start to think of how do I cut costs and make it affordable. And once you have reliable and then affordable energy, then you can start talking, now how do I reduce my environmental footprint? What are we currently doing? We're starting number 3. And what happens? Nothing. Well, actually, what happens? Negative things happen. Show that to your banks. Environmental protection means climate, pollution, plants, animals, land, space, material input, energy input. These are all environmental issues to consider. What do banks talk about? CO2. Show to your banks there's more to ESG than CO2. Of course they know that, but in the end they're driven by their own policies. The guys you speak to understand this. Tell them about energy density. One human can produce 0.6 kilowatt hours in a day. If I, as a human, work for 12 years, I produce 2,600 kilowatt hours. 12 years. If I make $5,000 a month, it will cost you $700,000 to produce that kilowatt hours from me. That is 1 ton of coal. 1 ton of coal after energy losses is 12 years of human labor. That's energy density. Okay? We have 8 billion tons of coal that we produce, 8.5 billion actually now, as Wuslat said. That's 250 billion humans. And we have a lot of oil, even denser than coal. This is per barrel, not per ton, so it looks a bit different. I should change that. And 100 million barrels per day equal 150 billion people of labor. So what we saw before, the development we had in the past, this since the Industrial Revolution, came exactly from that energy density. We used to have only ourselves and a couple of animals. And then we suddenly had energy-dense raw materials, which gave us what we needed to develop, to become healthier, wealthier. Now, I used to work at the Boston Consulting Group in Europe and the US, and they just recently wrote this paper called, what do they call it? Something about the, I have to change this here, that's too small for me, I'm half blind. How do I do this? How do I change the view? Thank you. So they recently wrote this paper on the transition. So you have these consulting companies regularly writing these, no, just make it full screen. Just take off this presentation mode thing. Yeah, perfect. So they have all these consulting companies spending this green money, right, which Mike was talking about. A lot of that money is spent on beautiful reports, a lot of it. I used to be myself write those nice reports. So they're talking about the energy transition. And they're explaining, the first transition was to coal from traditional biomass, then coal came up, it took 50 years on the left. Then next came the oil transition, we went to oil, then gas came, nuclear came, and now in the next 27 years we have this renewable transition to primarily wind and solar and hydrogen. That transition is going to be a little bit different from the past transitions because we're going to have to be twice as fast, and we're going to have to, in that time, twice as much. So we want to replace 70% of our energy from wind and solar and green things. So I wrote back to them. So this is 50 pages. So I wrote back to them 10 pages. They never reply, of course. And I told them, guys, is this the history of energy transition? Are you telling me that we have been transitioning in the past? Well, you're wrong. And there's not showing at all. Beautiful. Okay, why is this not happening? Like you can see it here. Let's see. I've had issues before that Mac doesn't. Oh, here it is. I said, this you should show. There has never ever been a transition to anything. There has only been addition. We've only added energy. We've never transitioned away from biomass. In fact, we consume as much, even more biomass than 200 years ago, as you can see in the green. We're still as green as we were back then. We never transitioned from coal to anything. In fact, we're consuming record volumes of coal. We never went away from oil, never went away from gas, never went away from nuclear. So anybody telling you that we're transitioning, we are not transitioning. We're adding much needed energy, if anything. Of course, right now it's 80% based on oil, coal, and gas, and it's, 5-6% based on wind and solar. In the next 27 years, we're going to need a little bit more energy, roughly 50% more. We're going to need 50% more energy. Show that to your banks who tell you, please change from coal to wind. Explain me how. Please, bank, explain me how I will do that. Why we need more energy, we understand. We're going to consume more per capita. And of course, the population is going to increase. And hopefully, we all live longer. So, transition doesn't exist. Until today. Maybe in the future it does. Until today, it has never, ever existed. Not even in Germany. Actually, in Germany, we'll talk about Germany. A slightly different case. Now, the funny thing is that the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the UN organization being chartered to study climate change and to prove that humans are the main cause for climate change. By the way, humans do contribute to climate change. I'm not a denier. Humans do contribute to climate change. Okay? But they are the ones chartered and paid for with those green funds to prove that humans are the main cause for all the disaster. The IPCC is telling you in their greenest scenario, their coal use will increase right here. These are the different scenarios the IPCC uses to evaluate in their climate models. And you can see that the per capita, which you cannot see very well, but you see it when you get my presentation, the per capita coal use per capita stays either the same in the greenest of greenest scenarios or goes up 8 times in the not so green scenarios per capita. And we're going to be a couple billion people more by 2100. So I mean, if the IPCC even assumes we're going to need more coal, they don't assume it, they don't say we need more coal, they just assume we have more coal, then you can show that to your banks. I'm like, guys, I'm supporting exactly this. I'm providing coal as per the greenest IPCC scenario. You see, people don't know these things, and it's complex. I read these things sometimes a bit more into detail, but it takes, unfortunately, effort to go into this. Right? World electricity, Wuslat mentioned. World electricity globally, you can see there's no transition, there's only addition. You can see coal and gas, 60% of global electricity. 36% from coal alone. 8 hours of 24 hours every single day on average in the world comes from coal. If we stop coal, we would not be sitting here anymore. People would die. Hundreds of millions of people would die. And yet, the G7, the ministers agreed to cut gas consumption to speed up renewable energy. So they don't even talk about coal anymore. Coal for them is gone, is done. They don't talk about coal anymore. Coal is gone. So now they're going to cut gas as well. Unfortunately, the gas industry has been fighting against the coal industry, claiming the gas industry is cleaner than coal, which is wrong. But they've been saying that, and now it's biting them back in the butt. Now they're in the same boat. They have the same problem as coal has. So when I speak to the banks, and the bank asks me, which we need funds as well, Lars, so what is your coal exit strategy? I tell them, I'll tell you when you tell me what your LNG exit strategy is. So you come tell me your LNG, liquefied natural gas exit strategy, then I tell you my coal exit strategy. because I can prove that LNG is worse for the climate than coal. Oh, no, okay. So I love talking to these guys, right? Because they don't have this information, I do. Yeah. Now, talking about the climate, unfortunately, we do have to talk about the climate a little bit, because being in coal, we're always the bad guys when it comes to the climate. So I want to give you another piece of information for your talks to your banks. Mike, I'm sorry. Well, actually, maybe good so. I think it helps you. The new climate reality. Professor Pielke has been writing amazing stuff. And here's a bit of reality for you. So when you go online, you can see that John Kerry, the US Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, you may have heard of him, Kerry said in September, 1 month ago, we are currently heading towards something like a 2.4 degree warming of the planet. That's what he said. 2.4 degree warming 1 month ago, of which, by the way, we already have 1.2 degrees done. So we have another 1.2 degrees to go, as per him, until 2100. Now, the same Kerry said 2 years earlier, currently we're talking, regrettably, we are on a course to hit 3 to 4 degrees of warming. So 2 years ago, he himself said 3 to 4 degrees of warming. Today he says, more correctly, 2.5 to 2.4, 2.5 degree of warming, which I probably would agree is correct. So another 1 to 2 degree. So we just shaved off, what, like 2 degrees of warming? Is that correct? No, 1 degree of warming. So in 2 years, we shaved off 1 degree of warming. So basically, 2 years ago, we were heading into a future which would be 2.5 degrees warmer than today. 2 years later, we're heading to a future which is only 1.2 degrees warmer than today. So we've halved the warming. I mean, how much better can we get? Well, I can tell you how much better we get, because the UN chief says the era of global boiling has arrived in July this year. Show this to your banks. Guys, we're so much better than 2 years ago. The world is not getting as warm and hot anymore. We're not going to boil anymore. Sorry that someone says we do, but we actually don't. This is all official UN information. The 2.4 degree, I can show you where it comes from. It's all, modeled and of course wrong, but I mean, it's at least official UN information. You have seen this many times. Death from natural disasters have plummeted to all-time lows from 100 years ago. Why? Energy, right? Why are Africans more prone to be at risk from natural disasters? Because they don't have access to enough energy. If I could build strong houses, if I could have good hospitals, if I could be better educated, which all requires energy, I will have a less chance of dying from a natural disaster. So if anyone is concerned about natural disaster, what do you have to do? Give them energy. How do you give them energy? Coal, 36% of power, 25% of primary energy. We understand that the African population is growing dramatically. You see the top curve is the world. We're going up to 10, 11 billion. Then you see Asia leveling off in the next 20 years, and you see Africa going from currently 1.4 billion to maybe 4 billion people. That's the current path. Africa has 18% of the global population right now, running to 25% of global population in the next 20 years, going up to probably 30, 40% in the next 80 years. Now, we've all seen these pictures. I've been in these places where you are in Africa, like in really poor dwellings, which exist also in South Africa. You know better than me. You live here. I don't live here. It's incredible. This is traditional biomass. This is green, right? This is what we used to have. This is what we have to go away from. How do we go away from it? With coal. Right? 3 to 4 million people die, premature death from biomass burning related diseases, right? As per other information, coal causes 3 million deaths, someone said in some peer-reviewed study. So there's more people dying from this than from coal. I can send you the study if you want to have it. So by giving coal to these people, you're actually saving huge amount of people. Now, coming to Africa, we understand that Africa, you have South Africa, and then you have North Africa, and you have the rest, Sub-Saharan Africa. Sub-Saharan Africa is green, because traditional biomass, they have nothing, they are green. Coal is not black, but in this case, it's, I also love IEA, like Wusat, I love the IEA. They have great information, great numbers. South Africa is coal, and North Africa tends to be more oil and gas. Now, when you look at the global coal production, Wusat showed you as well, we're at an all-time high. What's important here is of this 8.5 billion tons, Africa produces and consumes less than 4%. So you have 18% population share, but you're consuming only 4% of global coal. Could that be a reason why Africa tends to be poor? Could that be a reason that your consumption of fossil fuels is actually at the cause of the problems in Africa? Well, trust me, it is. Now, IEA again shows these numbers, people with electricity, and they show this declining curve. It used to be 1.5 billion people, now it's 700 million people who have no electricity at all. Now, what they don't show you is, what they didn't, first time IEA, by the way, Usa is very new, you love this is from September, from last month. You can see how Sub-Saharan Africa, actually people without electricity have increased by 100 million in the past 20 years. So Sub-Saharan Africa is getting poorer, while Asia is getting richer. So you can see all the decline has been in Asia, and all the increase has been in Africa. Show that to your banks. Why has Asia declined? Because Bangladesh, India, China, Pakistan are doing what? Using coal. IEA again, investments. This is the energy investments in Africa for the past 8 years. Left side North Africa, middle Sub-Saharan Africa, right side South Africa. You can't see South Africa, there's no investment here. So forget South Africa. I mean, when I see this, I'm like, wow. South Africa doesn't get any money. Nothing. This is billions of dollars. The bottom is 20 billion, so it's like, I don't know, less than 10 billion being invested every year in South Africa in energy. North Africa, you see decline. It's getting less money, investment. Sub-Saharan Africa is getting less. The population is increasing, and Africa is getting less money. Show that to your banks. The bank's fault. Blame it on the banks. I mean, it's incredible, right? Instead of giving money to Africa to give energy, we're taking money away. Oh no, we're not taking money away. We're giving you money for green energy. We'll talk about that. So, the total amount roughly is 100 billion and declining, invested in energy in Africa, as per IEA, newest information. Now, the total primary energy supply in Africa, as per IEA, has declined, or will decline in the next 10 years. Sorry, went up 2010 to 2020, and then is going down. You see that the traditional biomass is reducing and will all be replaced by renewables. Renewables is wind and solar, by the way, mostly. So, but the total primary energy is actually going to decline. So your population increases. IEA assumes you're going to use less energy. At the same time, South Africa is going to use the same, a little bit less as well. You can see the coal is going down as per IEA, and there's a little bit of wind and solar. I don't know what these guys are dreaming. Look at the same IEA report showing the African household electricity consumption more than doubling in the same time. I mean, you're getting less money because of the banks, blame it on them. You're gonna overall have less primary energy, but you're gonna double your electricity consumption, and you're gonna reduce coal. I don't know what they're dreaming. I don't know. It's incredible. Now, when you look at the world, and I'm sorry for all these numbers, but it's kind of important. This is the global investment in energy from the IEA again. And you can see that the supply of energy, the investment in supply of energy goes down from, I don't know, less than 1 trillion to 200 billion. And then there's a lot of investment in what they call power plants, electricity and heat. you can see that in total there's a $1.3 trillion investment in the supply of energy. Supply of energy. 1.3 trillion. You just remember you had 100 billion. That means you have 8% for 19% population. You have 8% of investment. Ask your bank, can you please at least give me the same share everybody else is getting, please? Is that possible? Now, when people talk about energy investment, they like to put together investment in supply on the left and investment in demand on the right, because EV is called transition energy investment, but the electric vehicle is not supplying me energy. The electric vehicle is consuming energy. Hydrogen is not giving me energy. Hydrogen is consuming energy. By the way, Mike, I'm sorry, I'm completely against wind and solar, and hydrogen is a disaster, energy economically why, and I explain why. But we are investing $3 trillion in consuming energy, 1.3 trillion in producing energy. Can someone see the problem? We are already in an energy crisis. The world is going into a much worse energy crisis. From a macroeconomic point of view, there's no question around this. We are running short of energy, not only here. Energy poverty in Germany, even there's even a page on the European Union website. So actually there are discussions. Yeah? In the UK, last winter, 70,000 people died because of high energy prices. 70,000 people, as per The Economist, died because they couldn't afford energy in the UK. Which of course they blame on Putin. And Putin certainly contributed, but the fundamental problem is something else. This is Germany. On the left side, you can see their installed capacity. Black is oil, coal and gas primarily. Green is wind and solar. And then yellow is nuclear, but the Germans want to turn off nuclear as well. So we're going to turn off our coal and we're going to turn off our nuclear. That makes more sense. On the right side, you see how the energy prices have developed in the meantime. You can see that we're now at 6.5, 7 times higher electricity prices than China, and we're 3 times higher than the US. And when it comes to German, there's an N missing, industrial electricity prices, they have increased 7-fold in the past 20 years. So Germany started the Energiewende, energy transition 20 years ago, and we managed to double or 7 times increase our cost of our prices for energy. And we are now running tight because, oops, sorry, this is always, apologize. No, there's missing something. Because the peak power demand is 80 gigawatt in Germany, 80 gigawatt. When you put a line 80 gigawatt, you see that actually Germany, that now comes to 12 to 20 times overbuilt. Germany would be 27 to 45 times. Now, I'm sorry for this experiment, but let's go through. So now I have overbuilt my capacity to have enough sun during the day, so at night I always have electricity. I have to overbuild 12 to 20 times. But what do I do for the winters? What do I do for the week when there's no sun? So you now can multiply what we call seasonal or weather variations. Do you want 5 days, 10 days, 20 days, or 60 days of storage? I give me 10 days of storage, it becomes 200 times overbuilt. You start to see the problem. This is just the question of intermittency and storage. It's not a question yet of energy density. There's only so much energy per square meter of sun. It doesn't matter what you do. No technology can change that. It's so dilute, there's so little. The sun is hugely strong, but there's so little coming per square meter. That's why you need these huge farms. Same with wind. So you start to see the problem why the transition to wind and solar is not a transition, it's not even additional, it is some addition, but it's a disaster. An economic and environmental disaster. And if we don't push back, who will? I don't know who will. Let's skip this. So hydrogen, the green steel is, so to produce 1 ton of steel, you need 0.6 to 0.7 tons of coking coal, roughly. Now, they want to make green steel with hydrogen. So instead of 0.6 to 0.7 tons of coking coal, they're now going to use 3 megawatt hours per ton of steel, of so-called green electricity, which you just clarified where it comes from. It's not green. It's a disaster. I spoke at a conference at the S&P in Singapore on this issue, and people were like looking at me, and first time I got standing ovation at a conference, people were like, holy shit, I've never understood this. Now I understand why it doesn't work. It doesn't work. They'll do it anyways. Just throws away money, and costs will go up, nothing else. Yeah. So Ussat showed this graph, right? The same thing. Bloomberg has used this levelized cost of electricity, which is at best misleading. It's actually, I mean, it's so disastrous I can't even explain. I've written on this online, and also the book explains what the problem is. Basically, it doesn't consider any backup or storage, which Luz had mentioned, but it also doesn't consider any network integration, grids. It doesn't consider the inefficiency, the raw materials required, all those things. Wind and solar is always, always more expensive than coal, gas, even nuclear at grid scale. And the more wind and solar you have, the more expensive it becomes. Every additional solar panel increases the costs for the country, every single one. Tell it to the banks. And if they say, no, I don't agree, then show me, explain me. They can't. So when they say switching to renewables could save trillions, or when the German Bundestag parliament lady said, the price of electricity will of course become cheaper after we exit nuclear because nuclear is so cheap, right? So expensive, then it's at best misleading or untrue. It's not true. I don't know if she knows it, probably not. But it's so, I mean, how can the world, BBC, CNN, Bloomberg, everyone say and continue to lie to us about this subject? I don't understand this. I really understand it. And why can we not go back and tell them? Because it's complicated. This is the energy required for the so-called transition. So there's this one think tank in the US, Thunderset Energy. So look at this. This basically says that today we're spending 1% of our total energy to make the transition happening. They're saying it will require in the future 7 to 8% of our energy just to transition. So we're going to waste 7% of energy we don't have to transition to something that doesn't work. I don't know what to say. Dr. Václav Smil said, decarbonization is our costliest challenge. McKinsey has done a report, estimated roughly 7 to 10% of global GDP, 7 to 10% of GDP will be spent on transition. In fact, Africa doesn't have the money, so who has to pay? The West. It will be 15 to 20% of GDP of the West. Who will love it? China. Right? China and India are going to make it. So I think you get the point. Examining wind and solar, it is not secure and is not affordable. Anybody else tell you anything else, ask them how, and if you cannot convince them, send them to me. If anyone tells you it's good for the environment, it's not true. It's not good for plants and animals, not good for land and space, not good for raw material requirements, it's not good for the energy efficiency. It's possibly good for the climate, but I would doubt that. But let's say it is. And it's probably good for pollution. Probably. Maybe, maybe not. So how can something that's not secure and not affordable and not really be environmentally positive be the solution? Mike, that's why I'm saying, no, I'm against wind and solar. I am for advancement and making things better and more efficient. I am against less efficient. And wind and solar is making our raw material requirements and our energy supply less efficient. Hugely less efficient, a little bit, hugely. So South Africa, this is the South African policy, whatever. You're going to reduce your coal power from 220 terawatt hours to 140 terawatt hours, and you're going to increase your wind and solar. Again, assuming 1 to 1 has the same value, because it doesn't. Yeah, good luck. Guys, it would be funny, but it's not. Yesterday I spoke at a conference in Cape Town at the African Energy Forum, and luckily Mantashe was sitting there. This is so serious, I don't know how to say it. If we don't stop this very, very soon, the lights are going to be off even longer. So what do we do? People always ask me, what do we do, Lars? What do you suggest? Well, very simple. Number one, we have to invest in base research to find a truly long-term sustainable solution for energy. We have to invest in research, which includes the nuclear force, the planetary system. There's a lot of energy out there within the world, and maybe one day a little Mars animal comes and shows us something, a new stone comes down here. Who knows? We don't know everything, right? So we have to invest in this. Until we have the solution, we do what? We invest in what we have, which is oil, coal, gas, and nuclear. We have to dramatically increase our investment. You saw the investment numbers, they're going down. The world needs more energy, and we're investing less. I mean, I don't know who doesn't understand this. Which minister doesn't understand it? Which government doesn't understand this? I know it's about a lot about money, huge money. Trillions of dollars has to be spent on the transition. But are we really doing this? And who is going to go against this? Somebody has to. And I'm doing my best, I'm trying, okay? And I think hopefully many of you can also do that. Be open. Guys, I understand coal has problems. How do you solve a problem? Taking money away from a problem or putting money into a problem? You put money into coal to make it cleaner and better and more efficient. If you have a better solution, show me, I go away, no problem. Right? Gas is not better for South Africa. Gas is more expensive. You cannot store gas the same way you can store coal. Nuclear is more expensive. It's all good, but not enough. So Africa needs to urgently invest in its coal infrastructure. Urgently. All of Africa. Read the book if you have time. It's on Amazon. Again, it explains this in detail, all the economic fundamentals behind all this. I have stuff on YouTube that you can watch that summarize some of these issues. If you have any questions about the climate, I recommend the book Unsettled by Professor Koonin. It's a very balanced book. He himself used to advise the IPCC on how the climate works and how it doesn't work. Not about denying climate change. And I have written some papers online. You can read at LCVS-SSRN. You can look for me or follow me on LinkedIn. So I think that's it. I may have overused my time, but I hope it's okay. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope a few things stick.